It's Rachel. Very quick video on end of season bed cleanup and trench composting. I'm standing where my trellises used to be. I do take those down at the end of the season. They would withstand the winter just fine, but it's more convenient for me to access the beds without them in place. Let me show you that process and also what we do to make sure that we have good soil for next year. Quickly, the concept of trench composting is to bury the remains of the crops that you've been growing that year. Those plants are composed primarily of trace elements and minerals that they've received from the soil, in addition to carbon dioxide from the air. If we were to remove and dispose of that plant material, you're taking even more away from the soil. In theory, I could just compost all of it and then put it back, but I do like the simplicity and the directness of composting all of these components directly in place in the beds in which they were grown. The first step is to go through and remove any material that you do not intend to compost. This would be anything diseased, which luckily for me I didn't have this year. The second category is anything with a seed load that you don't want. This definitely would include weeds that have set seed. Any of those should not be composted. In my case, it also includes just a ton of tomatoes that froze on the vine during our first freeze of the year. I'm going to go through here, take them down first, and make sure that I separate them out from the material that's going to be composted. That would also include bean pods. I had a few of those that froze on the vine. I just don't want to have a ton of volunteer tomatoes and beans coming up in these beds next year. The next step is to start freeing the trellises. We previously did a video on our trellis construction, and I'll link it here. But the basic idea is that these are cattle panels secured to the T-posts with zip ties. We did it this way so that I can leave the T-posts in place, since driving them into the ground is the hardest part, and just cut off the zip ties at the end of the year and then set the panels away for storage. You'll notice I start removing some of these ties before I'm pulling crops off the trellis. This is because having quite literally a bit of wiggle here in the trellises makes it easier for me to get some of these crop residues off. But you could choose to leave these completely locked in place while you remove the plants if you find that that's easier for you. This is also when I cut off any ties that I've used to hold the tomatoes to the trellises. The beans will climb the cattle panels and secure themselves quite well on their own. The tomatoes, when they're large enough, I just weave them in and out, and they also secure nicely. But in the first couple of months of their growth, I do use ties to hold them in place, that kind of bottom 2 feet of tomato. Here is my bucket of debris that I'm not composting. And here is my pile of debris that is going to be composted. The next step is to dig a trench down the center of the bed. I stomp my pile of compostable materials first because I don't want to stomp in the bed. But stomp this down, lay it down the trench in the middle, and then I gently cover it back with soil. I don't need to completely bury it because I am going to add another layer. I time my bed clean out if possible to coincide with our last mowing of the lawn of the year. This time of year we have a layer of leaves on the lawn. Rather than raking those up, we leave them in place and mow them with the grass. This results in the mix you see here. It's a really nice chopped up fine blend of carbon and nitrogen, perfect for composting. After I have covered the bed loosely with soil, I will go through and give it a very heavy mulch of this mixture. A 4-foot by 8-foot bed we find takes about 2 full bags. In my case, the second bag had a lot more grass in it, so I'm going to see me kind of going back through here and mixing it together to try and balance that out a bit. Pulling back, we had more than 2 bags. I used the remainder to do kind of an underdressing and extra mulch layer on my fall and winter greens that are already in the other 2 beds. And the summer bed, which really had all of my heavy feeding plants in it, has had a lot, hopefully, of help here to boost its fertility and its nutrient content going into next year. That's it. There you go. Put to bed, ready for the winter to recuperate and be fresh for next spring. This, sadly, pretty much does mark the end of the gardening season for me. My winter greens are in the bed that I already showed you. I'm harvesting those, and yeah, that's it. I think we are now officially at the end of the season. I hope everybody had a great gardening year. Thanks.